order.
The draft Barnsley and Sheffield boundary change order 2024.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I beg to move that the committee has considered the Barnsley and Sheffield boundary change order 2024. The order is straightforward. The instrument provides for the boundary between Barnsley and Sheffield to be revised so the whole area of the Alterbridge housing development will be in the city of Sheffield. The instrument also provides for the consequential changes to the corresponding ward and parish boundary. Both councils concerned support the boundary change, as do the affected parish councils. Prior to going into the detail of the order, and with apologies, I must draw the committee's attention to the correction slip issued to correct the minor drafting and formatting errors. Firstly, to remove the phrase Ministry for, where the order states the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government at page 1 first. And second paragraph, page 2, article 2, page 5, signature box, and paragraphs 2 and 6 of the explanatory note. Secondly, to provide a clearer map of the boundary change to the explanatory note. A formatting issue meant the map lacked clarity when it was inputted into the order. With the help of the statutory instrument registrars, the correction slip now enables the same map to be sufficiently clear and cover a full page. These minor errors in the original draft order are now corrected. The substance of the order is unchanged, and I hope the reformatted map provides for greater clarity for those reading the order papers. Few reviews of the external administrative boundaries of local authority areas in England have been carried out since 1992. As a consequence, from time to time, there are small-scale boundary anomalies between local authorities, often caused by new development and population changes. Whilst in practice, local government will put in place informal arrangements to deal with such situations, the very fact that they need to do so is not conducive to the effective and convenient local government. Such anomalies can also impact on the perceptions of community identity, where residents do not feel, for whatever reason, part of a particular area. They are potentially less likely to take an interest in their council. On the 14th of April 2022, the Local Government Boundary Commission for England received a formal request for a review of the boundary in the area made jointly by Barnsley Council and Sheffield City Council. The existing boundary runs along the River Don, but this resulted in the Alterbridge Mill development being split between the two councils. Both councils told the Local Government Boundary Commission England that due to the geography of the local communities and the existing road layout, the impact on service demand would mostly be felt by Sheffield Council, and that services would be better delivered by that council. The Local Government Boundary Commission England undertook a review of the boundary and consulted those affected. Of the 19 responses, there was a majority support for the boundary change. The Local Government Boundary Commission England final recommendations following the consultation was to transfer the area of the Alterbridge Mill housing development that is in Barnsley into Sheffield. This would move a section of the council shared boundary at the River Don to encapsulate the Alterbridge Mill development of 12 existing and 284 future dwellings. A recommendation was to realign the ward boundaries and also a suggestion for the realignment of the parish boundaries too. After receiving the final recommendations, the Secretary of State also allowed 4 weeks for interested parties to make representations. The Department received no representations in this period. The instrument I have brought forward has provided for the boundary between Barnsley and Sheffield to be revised so that the whole area of the Alterbridge Mill housing development will be in the city of Sheffield. Thank you.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Barnsley and Sheffield boundary change order 2024. Shadow Minister.
Ms Harris, His Majesty's Loyal Opposition has no objections to these entirely sensible proposals and will not seek to divide the committee.
Barry Gardner.
Thank you, Ms Harris. How good it is to have your guidance for our first legislative duty of the day. Today's going to be a busy one for all of us, with votes on the budget and the ramifications of the US election competing in our minds for attention. And whilst boundary changes may seem like minor political fare in comparison, it's important that we recognise that we're dealing with the fine grain of politics, people affected at the very most local level by the decisions we make. First, though, I want to express my profound gratitude to our whip, for thinking of me as someone who just might be interested in the draft Barnsley and Sheffield Boundary Change Order 2024. I know that she'll have had many colleagues who would willingly have supplanted me and usurped my duties on this 6th Delegated Legislation Committee, and I can only guess at why it was that she so singularly favoured me with the appointment. But I trust that the length of the speech I'm about to make will be sufficient to express to her just how appreciative I am that she did allot me this task. Inevitably, boundary changes can be controversial. Sometimes we risk separating a region from its history. Ms. Harris, I don't know whether it's an old saying or whether it's just that I've been saying it for a very long time, but scratch history and you find geography. Our history is moulded by our natural environment. Each region has its own that will depend entirely upon the fertility of its land, its proximity to the oceans and trade routes, its access to fresh water or natural resources like coal or precious metal. Of course, the Boundary Commission has a serious job of work to do in keeping our democracy relevant and connected to people. But sometimes, quite without wishing to, it can end up dividing a community and confusing future residents, all at the expense of the taxpayer. Now, the Minister made much of the fact that this order would affect only 12 households. But according to the Barnsley and Sheffield Principal Area Boundary Review final recommendations for publication, they say, our final recommendation to change the district boundary in this area currently affects 12 households. But they also say that the figure rises to 284 households by the time the development has been built. That's about 800 to 1,000 people. Now, the Minister also said that no representations were made. Well, of course they weren't. The people haven't moved in yet into those 284 households, so how could they be? And that's why it falls to us here in Parliament to be able to consider what those individuals, when they move in, might wish to know. So let us look carefully at just what is going to be at stake for those 284 families. Of course, Ms. Harris, we should be just as concerned were it only the 12 current families, but let's consider precisely what will divide them, these future families, from their nearest neighbours in the other part of the Ortybridge Mill. Because the argument that's been made by the local authorities is that it would be more convenient administratively for them to have the whole development come under Sheffield. But we ought to be more concerned with the families and what it might mean for those families. It's on their lives that the decision we take today will have such a profound influence. Now, any honourable member who's looked carefully at the map of the area will have noticed that the part of the Ortybridge Mill development that currently lies under the jurisdiction of Barnsley Council in the Peniston East Ward is not only by far the larger part of the site, I would say about 3 to 4 times the size of that in the Sheffield area, but it's actually separated from the residential area of Ortybridge Village by not one, but by 2 major physical barriers. Now, the first barrier is the River Don itself, with only one narrow river crossing available to the whole Barnsley side of the estate. Any resident who travels from the eastern part of the development at the far end of Aspen Road and who wanted to, say, walk to the post office in Ortybridge Village would face a 1.5 mile journey there, so a 3-mile round trip. But the River Don is not the biggest problem, Mrs. Harris. There's also the A6102. Langsett Road North is indeed a major road, in parts a 4-lane highway, and it runs parallel with the River Don. This is not a road that binds people on one side to the people of the other in one community with a shared road artery. It's a road that forms a natural boundary and separates people. No doubt this double barrier was what the Boundary Commission was accounting for when it made its original proposal. So we must not assume that some of these 284 families would not rather enjoy being residents of Barnsley Council and appreciate the vision of individuals like Councillor Sir Stephen Houghton, CBE, who chairs the Barnsley 2030 Strategy Board, and Councillor Bob Curtin, his vice chair. Their strategy states that it's about celebrating and championing the borough as it progresses to 2030 and sets out some bold ambitions. In developing the Barnsley 2030 strategy, they've worked closely with the communities, the businesses and organisations across all sectors and local councillors. And at the time of writing the strategy, they confidently stated, our borough's vision and ambitions represent everyone who has an interest in the future of Barnsley. Now, of course, when it was written, Ms. Harris, that included the people in the Ortybridge Mill development. So who are we to deny these residents access to the bold and ambitious plan that they speak of? They conclude, we truly believe that together we can tell a better and shared story of our borough, and we have a real opportunity to turn Barnsley into the place of possibilities. In passing this order, we deny those possibilities to 284 families. Ms. Harris, I live in the London Borough of Brent, but I'm only too well aware of how many families in Brent prefer to give out their address as being in Harrow. And indeed, many of them have a Harrow postcode to justify their little white lie. We've seen no impact assessment of what such a boundary change might do to the value of these properties in Barnsley and Sheffield.
Mr. Gardner, can I ask you to keep it in scope, please?
Indeed, no, I'm talking about the effect on the future value of these properties. Some of whom have moved in under one local authority may find their property value affected by suddenly being designated under another. And I must stress that I respect both councils and have no doubt that they look after their populations equally well. But we should have been provided with an impact assessment to show that there is no such adverse.
Point of order, opposition.
Ms Harris, thank you. We've clearly had from the Minister the strong support of the two local authorities, and that clearly has given us a great deal of detail to reflect on. So, based on that, may I move that the question be now put?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair, for that. And can I thank the member for the contribution. I think given the diligence that he's applied in preparation for this speech, I'm very happy to recommend to the whip that you join us in future SIs in future. I'd like to thank members of the committee for this.
Ms Harris, I believe a point of order was made and a motion was made, but I didn't hear any vote taken on the motion. And I would have thought that that was the function of the chair.
Yeah, it is. My apologies. All in favour of the opposition motion? Against? Division. Lock the doors. No, not yet.
Division is well.
I didn't think this would be the most contentious political issue today.
Is it first, Sally? Lock the doors.
Is everyone ready?
Is everyone ready? Everyone's happy? Right. Lock the doors.
Charlie Dewhurst? Barry Gardner?
Aye.
Okay. Vote should follow voice. So voice should follow vote.
So what do we do now?
So he should be voting no.
Right, okay.
Because
The ayes have it. Minister.
Okay. Right, here. So, there's not a great deal to round up, other than to reflect. One, the consultation that did take place did include the residents who live in the Ortybridge site at present, and the majority were in support of the move. And in reference to the 284 properties that will be brought into the wider development, I would say that most normal people, of which we are not them, because we're here talking about local government boundaries, of which we care a lot about, but most people live in places. They live in places with identities that they feel connected to. And I just draw members' attention to the sales brochure for the site that talks about one of the most attractive developments in Sheffield. It has a Sheffield address and it has a Sheffield postcode. So I think most people moving into that new development that he references will absolutely believe they are moving into Sheffield, and this order allows them to enjoy the services of Sheffield Council in response. On that basis, I'm very happy for it to That's it.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Barnsley and Sheffield boundary changes order 2024. As many of their opinions say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order.